A discussion cropped up on Twitter yesterday about the idea of moving to Splat Zones only tournament formats. I'll say up front that I don't like the idea as a competitive player, nor do I think it would be conducive to the growth of the game. In the original tweet by Gray of Alliance Rogue, he says, quote, "I've been advocating for Splat Zones only for years, other people for even longer, but I have yet to hear anyone genuinely say something good about TC, RM, or CB. I'm no top player, and maybe it's not really my opinion he's interested in hearing, but I'm going to say some good things about Tower Control, Rainmaker, and Clam Blitz, as well as some things I don't like about Splat Zones, and a few other miscellaneous reasons why I don't like the proposal. We'll start with Zones. Zones is the only mode in the game where the objective doesn't move, with the exception, I guess, of Bloof and Depot. Cool idea the way it moves there, but it's hard to be enthusiastic given the map that it's on. Since the objective doesn't move, it's more difficult to neutralize the objective than in any other mode, because in other modes, the scoring team necessarily moves into more and more disadvantageous positions as they get closer to KOing. It's also the mode that puts the scoring team at the least of a disadvantage. Scoring players don't have their positions revealed, and aren't slowed down or put in difficult positions while they're scoring, unless the enemy team can reach the zone first. Despite taking a while in comparison to, say, Rainmaker, Splat Zone's KOs happen pretty often and pretty quickly because of this. From a spectator's perspective, I find KOs in this mode to be particularly boring outcomes. In every other mode, you have to actively do something to KO, but in Zones, you just have to prevent something from happening, stall the enemy team, waste time. From a player's perspective, it's pretty punishing to play unless the teams are evenly matched enough that the zone is flipping a lot. I'd rather get more chances to play the game in a losing match, and in a winning match, I'd rather feel like I earned a KO than being like, oh, I guess we did it then. Another issue I have with Zones is that it heavily favors high paint weapons, which means that weapon comps would lose a significant amount of diversity if that was all we cared about. Sure, paint is always an advantage, but other modes favor other advantages that weapons can have that can offset low paint output. In Zones, if your weapon isn't slaying disproportionately, you might as well just pick the better painting option. And weapon variety is something that keeps more players interested in the game competitively. Even if someone's willing to switch to Zap for some modes, if they can even pick their preferred weapon in one mode, they're often more than happy to put up with it and be on a competitive team for that opportunity. Weapon variety is also valuable from the perspective of production, because audiences get tired of seeing the same strategies used and reused and start to tune out. Tower Control is actually an incredible mode, one of my favorites now that Stingray isn't in the game. The tower path being hard-coded into the game forces players to play every part of the map around it, allowing the developers to turn areas of the map that would normally be irrelevant into areas you have to contend with. A well-drawn tower path forces some really complex decisions. My personal favorite was the near figure 8 path from Splatoon 2 Piranha Pit, where the objective line would double back on itself, forcing teams to rotate back and forth over the course of even just a single push, allowing for interesting rotation decisions that demanded good awareness of the game state. The shape of the tower makes it uniquely vulnerable to AoE weapons, meaning that niche weapons like, say, the Vanilla Blaster get a chance to be played there even at top level, which is a win for weapon diversity. Rainmaker is one of the most fast-paced and exciting modes to watch, while nevertheless being relatively difficult to KO, even against a somewhat evenly matched team. It's arguably the single mode that does the most to feature Splatoon's unique movement mechanics, in that you can't just stand still and fire shots and hold ground to be able to hold a scoring position. You need to physically move forward quickly to earn points. Painting the feet of the Rainmaker is one of the most effective strategies for preventing its advance. It has the most fluid objective line, allowing the offensive team multiple options for accomplishing the same goal with the dual first checkpoints. It favors very fast-moving and fast-painting weapons, as well as weapons that do more damage to the Rainmaker shield, meaning that some niche picks like Sploosh, Dapples, and Bloblobber make more sense here than usual. From a spectator's perspective, dunking the Rainmaker is really cool. It's so cool, Nintendo made it the way you defeat the final boss in Splatoon 2's story mode. Clam Blitz has a mix of a lot of different advantages from other modes. Like in Rainmaker, you can advance in a variety of different ways, and unlike Rainmaker, anyone can play the objective at any time and do so equally well regardless of how well their weapon paints, unlike in Splat Zones. The mode tests both your ability to push forward and secure space for a moving objective, like in Rainmaker or Tower Control, and your ability to hold space around the basket, like in Splat Zones. It features a bunch of interesting tricks to facilitate scoring, like clam juggling and power clam super jumps that test the team's defense, but it's still best played with an honest whole team special push for maximum scoring impact, so it never feels too gimmicky, even when something like crack and cheese is occasionally in vogue. This is another mode that really emphasizes painting and movement mechanics. Painting a safe perimeter around the basket is one of the most important tactics for securing your basket on defense. Another point I'd like to make about playing zones only is that it would either lead to a huge decrease in map variety or an increase in the pool of disliked maps that we'd need to learn for competitive play. For example, Scorch Gorge Zones is arguably the worst map mode in the entire game, but Rainmaker and Clam Blitz are very popular on that map. We'd either be locking ourselves into only ever playing an infuriatingly poorly designed version of the map, or just never seeing the first Splatoon 3 map we ever saw in the trailers in tournaments at all. From a production perspective, the variety of modes gives casters more to talk about, gives production folks more graphics to flex with, and gives the theory crafters and analysts more to puzzle over when the dust is settled and the replay codes are distributed. From a player perspective, we can favor Splat Zones over the other modes if we agree that it's the best test of the team's abilities, but I do think that there are some abilities we value in teams that other modes test better than Splat Zones does. I personally am a lot less interested in playing a zones-only tournament than an all-modes tournament, and I think there are more people who think like me on that than there are to the contrary. I will, nevertheless, be interested in following the conversation to see the viewpoints of others on the subject.